Later that evening, Vine stood in front of the mirror debating her outfit choices. Why was she even putting in this much effort? It wasn't a real date. It's just a meal with her husband. The thought made her stomach twist weirdly. After finally settling on a simple yet elegant black dress, she walked downstairs only to find Jungkook waiting by the door, dressed in an all black suit. Vine stood in her track. He looked unfairly attractive. Took you long enough? He eyed her, his gaze lingering for a second longer than necessary before he smirked. You dressed up for me, huh? Don't flatter yourself. She lifted her chin. I dress up for me, Jungkook chuckled. Sure, Mrs. Jones. She rolled her eyes and walked past him, only for Jungkook to place a hand on the small of her back, guiding her towards the car. The simple touch sent an unexpected shiver down her spine, but she ignored it. The restaurant was fancy dim lighting, expensive decor, and the kind of atmosphere that screamed power couple. As soon as they sat, the waiter brought them wine. Jungkook swilled his glass lazily before looking at her. So, wife, are we celebrating something? Wine narrowed her eyes. Why do you keep calling me that? She looked mad, but cute at the same time with her red cheeks. Because you are. He leaned forward. Or did you already forget our little wedding? He raised his brow, a mischievous glint in his eyes. I'm trying to, she muttered, while Jungkook smiled. That hurts, baby. Wine choked on her drink, making Jungkook laugh. Stop calling me that, she whined, while Jungkook's smile only grew wider. You prefer something else? His voice dropped slightly. Darling, sweetheart, I prefer wine. She gave him a deadpan look. Boring. He sighed dramatically. But fine, I will give you a break for now. Wine huff, but couldn't stop her lips from twitching. She hated to admit it, but their banter was fun. Later, as they were finishing dinner, a man approached their table. Wine. Wine looked up, blinking in surprise. Oh, Jisoo, what are you doing here? Jisoo smiled. Business dinner. I didn't expect to see you. His eyes flickered to Jungkook, who was now silently watching him with a blank expression. And who's this? Before Wine could answer, Jungkook casually reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. Her husband. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were sharp. Wine's breath hitched while Jisoo blinked. Oh, I didn't know you were married. Wine forced a smile while eyeing Jungkook. Now you do. He leaned back, his gaze never leaving Jisoo's face. Anything else? Jisoo chuckled awkwardly. No, just wanted to say hi and give him a polite note, but the moment he left, she turned to Jungkook. Was that necessary? She asked. Was what necessary? He took a sip of his wine, acted all innocent. The husband act the hair thing, Jungkook smirked. What? Did it make your heart race? No, she quickly replied. You sure? He leaned in slightly. You look a little flustered. He whispered that made my cheeks burn. I hate you. That's a strong word, baby. Jungkook laughed, clearly enjoying himself while Vian turned away, her cheeks burning. Why did he have to be so annoying? And why, for some reason, did she not hate it as much as she should? When they arrived at the June estate, Jungkook parked and got out without a word. His mood suddenly changed after that call when they were leaving the restaurant, and then no one spoke a word the whole way back to home. And followed him quietly, but before she could say anything, a sharp sting shot through her arm. She winced. Jungkook noticed instantly. You are hurt. His voice dropped, his expression changing in an instant. It's just a scratch. She waved it off. Probably happened while running. Jungkook didn't look convinced. Without warning, he took her wrist, examined the small cut on her forearm. It wasn't a serious injury, but the cut was still fresh, and Ryan didn't pay attention to it. Jungkook is fine. Shut up and sit down. He guided her to the living room couch before disappearing into another room and huffed but sat anyways. Watching as he returned with the first aid kit, he knelt in front of her, silently dabbing disinfectant on the wound. I can do it myself, she said softly. I don't trust you not to make it worse. His tone was serious, but there was something else, something gentle. One didn't respond. She just watched as he worked, his hand surprisingly careful despite how strong they were. There, he taped the bandage in place. Then finally looked up, his gaze locking onto hers. Try not to die before I figure out what to do with you. Oh, how romantic. She rolled her eyes. I love being an inconvenience to my husband, Jungkook smirked. His usually playful demeanor returned. You are not an inconvenience. Wine raised a brow. Then, what am I? Jungkook paused for a second, just a second, his expression softened. Then, just as quickly, he smirked. A headache. Wine gasped, shoving his shoulder. You, Jungkook chuckled. To get some sleep, Mrs. June. He stood up and slid his hand in his pocket. Don't Mrs. June me. Jungkook only winked before walking away, leaving Wine for me. But once he was gone, her expression changed because beneath all the teasing and annoyance, she felt something else, something she wasn't ready to admit. Wan was about to head upstairs when she noticed Jungkook on the phone again. His voice was low, serious. Keep looking, I don't care how long it takes, he said, and then there was a pause as he heard the other person on the phone. I need to find her, Wan frowned. Who was he talking about? She didn't know why, but her chest felt tight, and for the first time she wondered, was she really the only woman in Jungkook's life? She can't just jump without knowing anything, so she decided to stay quiet. Wan headed towards her room. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the spacious bedroom. Vine started grounding as she stretched. Her mind was still muddled from the previous night's chaos, Jungkook patching her up, and his caring side, and the unsettling call she had overheard. She turned her head, expecting to find the room empty, but instead Jungkook stood by the window, buttoning his shirt. Vine's breath hitched. The early morning light made him look effortlessly breathtaking, his dark hair slightly messy, his chiseled features sharp yet somehow softer in this moment. You are awake, Vine blinked, snapping out of her daze. Obviously, she sat up, running a hand through her hair. What time is it? Late enough for you to get up. We have plans tonight. Vine narrowed her eyes. Plans? She asked confusedly, and Jungkook turned smirking. I'm throwing a party, Vine frowned. You hosting a party? Why do you sound so surprised? He adjusted his cufflinks. It's a business thing. You will be by my side. Excuse me, she looked at him with questioning gaze. Is he also only marry her for business? The thought swirling in her mind. You are my wife, he shrugged. People need to see that. Wait, pupil? Her stomach dropped. Who exactly is coming? Jungkook's smirk deepened. Your father and Minho. The room fell silent. Vine froze, her heartbeat picking up. What? They need to see who you belong to now. His voice was calm, but his eyes gleamed with something darker. Vine clenched her face. I don't belong to anyone, Junk chuckled. Sure, Mrs. June. Vine threw a blow at him, but he was already went out of the room. Vine sighed tightly while looking out of the window. He knew everything about me and my dad, but he still wants me to face them. I hope you are not like them, Jungkook. I hope there is no betrayal, no cheating and benefits, she thought. The June mansion was transformed into the breathtaking venue. Chandeliers glowed, the sound of elegant conversation filling the space. Guests mingled, sipping expensive wine, discussing business deals, and occasionally stealing glances at the newly wedded couple. Vine stood beside Jungkook wearing an elegant satin gown. She felt every stare. Jungkook leaned down, whispering in her ear, You look good in red. Vine's cheeks burned, but before she could respond, the room went quiet. She turned, and there they were, Mr. Lu and Minho. Her father's expression was unreadable, but his eyes were cold as ever. Minho, on the other hand, had the audacity to smirk. Well, didn't expect this. Vine clenched her fist. You humiliated me, Vian. His voice was low but sharp, running from your wedding like a reckless child. Oh, I am the one who humiliated you, she scoffed. Your perfect. A son in law was with his mistress on our wedding day, and you expect me to go through with it? Minhu would have changed, Vian laughed bitterly. Oh, right, because it's normal for men like him to have mistresses, right? Minhu smirked, stepping closer. Still bitter, sweetheart. Jungkook moved before Vian could react. I will suggest you step back. His voice was deadly. Minhu's smirk faltered. Let's get one thing clear. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it sent chills down everyone's spine. Mine is mine now. And if you or anyone else tries to humiliate my wife, you will regret it. Minhu's jaw tightened. Do you think marrying into the June family makes her untouchable? He scoffed. She is still my daughter. Correction, she was your daughter, he smirked. And now she is a June, which means you have no power over her. Van's breath caught her thread as she looked at him. Jungkook didn't just defend her, he claimed her. And for some reason she didn't hate it. She felt protected. The entire time Jungkook kept teasing her, calling her with names, but Vine didn't hate it. She didn't felt annoyed but started liking it. She wasn't much thinking about her decision, but now she felt it. There was something between them, like they know each other from so long, like they had a connection before, and whenever Jungkook introduces her as his wife, it makes her only blush. The grand party had ended, leaving behind an air silence in the June mansion. The tension from earlier still lingering in the air. Jungkook stood by the fireplace, his gaze locked onto the amber liquid swirling in his glass. Wan entered the room, her expression unreadable as she crossed her arms. I want to know something. Jungkook didn't look at her immediately, but she noticed his finger tighten around the glass. What? Wan hesitated before stepping closer. Who were you talking about last night? Jungkook finally turned his head, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. Why does it matter? Wan scoffed, tilting her head. Because you have been acting all mysterious, taking secret calls, leaving suddenly, and you are clearly searching for someone. She paused before adding, is it a woman? Jungkook exhaled sharply, setting his ring down. Yes, something in Wan's chest twisted. Who is she? She asked, her voice firm even though her heart was beating fastly, but she decided to confront. Someone I lost a long time ago. His voice softened slightly, his gaze flickering with something almost longing. She was my childhood sweetheart, the only person who ever made me promise something I could never forget. Wan's breath caught in her throat. What promise? Jungkook chuckled, but there was no humor in it. That I will find her again no matter what, that I will never forget her. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare vulnerability slipping through his cold demeanor. She was taken away from me when we were kids. I tried searching for her for years, but I never found a trace. I don't even know what she looks like now. Wan's heart pounded. Memories once she had thought about in years rushed to the surface. A boy with bright eyes, a small hand clasping hers, a promise whisper under the stars. What was her name? Wan's voice was barely above a whisper as she asked, gathering her all courage. Moon. Jungkook's gaze softened as he whispered the name. The room fell silent. Wan's entire body froze. Her pulse roared in her ear, her breathing suddenly uneven because she knew that name. It was her name, the childhood name he gave her. Moon? Her voice trembled. You call her Moon? She asked desperately while Jungkook nodded. Yeah, I gave her that name because she loved the moon. She wanted to be like it, always glowing even in the darkest nights. One gasped softly because those were her words. It was her. Her lips parted in disbelief as tears pricked in her eyes. Without thinking, she surged forward, wrapping her arm around him tightly, made him froze. Goop. She called out, her voice barely above a whisper while Jungkook went raged. His arm didn't move, his breath hissed. What? Van pulled back just enough to look at him, her teary eyes searching his shocked ones. You are my Gook. Jungkook's expression was unreadable, stunned, confused, overwhelmed. Van sniffled, reaching into her purse with shaky hands. You told me to never forget you. You gave me something to remember you by. She pulled out a small delicate bracelet, a silver charm in the shape of a crescent moon, dangling from it. Jungkook's breath left his lungs. His eyes widened, hands clutching at his sides as he stared at it as Vine held it up. You gave me this, her voice broke, and I keep it all these years. Jungkook swallowed hard, his body moved before his mind could catch up. His fingers reached for the bracelet, brushing against hers. No way. His voice was barely above a whisper, disbelief and hope battling in his eyes. You are my moon? Vine nodded, fresh tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, Goop. Jungkook exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face as if trying to ground himself. Then, in one swift motion, he pulled her into his arm, his grip almost desperate. You are really her, he laughed breathlessly, spinning her around in his embrace. I can't believe this, Van giggled through her tears, clinging to him. Jungkook pulled back just lightly, his forehead pressing against hers. His eyes held a mixture of wonder and something deeper, something more intense, because the little girl turned out Vian, his wife. The situation would be different if it was not Vian on the place. He will not held his moon like this. He surely cared, maintaining distance. You found me, Moon. Vine smiled. You promised. Remember, Jungkook chuckled, his arm still around her, and I never break my promises. Vine nodded, its smiling ear to ear, like she just found her lost treasure. Oh, I can't believe you were always near me in front of my eyes, and you are my wife, he laughed, while Vine also giggled, nodding her head. You protect me even without knowing Jungkook. I can't tell you what I'm feeling right now. Jungkook nodded, held her hand, and kissed on the back of her hand. Then, a mischievous smirk across his lips. Since fate already brought us together and we are already married, his finger traced along her waist. Let's celebrate our wedding night, Moon. Vine's entire face burned. Jungkook, Jungkook green. What? It's a valid suggestion. Vian sweated his arm. Her cheek still flushed. You are impossible. Jungkook chuckled, leaning closer, his lips just inches away from her, and yet you are stuck with me now, wife. Wan's heart raced because, for the first time, she didn't mind being his. Wan's heart was still pounding from the overwhelming realization she had found her Gook and he had found his moon. Everything felt like a dream, yet Jungkook's arm around her proved it was real. But just as warmth spread in her chest, a small thought crept into her mind, making her hesitant. Wan pulled back slightly, looking into Jungkook's eyes, which were still filled with disbelief and wonder. Jungkook, her voice was barely above a whisper. What if it wasn't Moon? What if you found her and it wasn't me? Jungkook's expression shifted instantly. The playfulness disappeared, replaced by something deeper, something intense. Then it will not have mattered. Jungkook up her face, his thumb gently brushing against her cheek. His voice was firm, yet there was a softness in it. What? Wan blinked surprised, while Jungkook exhaled, his gaze locking onto hers. Because the moment you run into my life wearing that ridiculous heavy gown, barefoot, fearless and reckless, I knew you were mine. His voice was steady, laced with sincerity. Moon or not, I would have never let you go, Wan. Her breath hissed. You think I agreed to marry you just because I wanted to mess with your father? He chuckled lightly, shaking his head. Maybe at first, but then you happened. His thumb pressed the corner of her lips, eyes darkening slightly. Every damn second with you, I felt something changing. The way you argue, the way you stand up for yourself, the way you talk about the things you love. You make my world loud, chaotic, and impossible to ignore. He leaned closer, his breath fanning against her lip. And I don't want to ignore it anymore. Vine swallowed hard, her fingers unconsciously gripping his blazer. I love you, Vine. His voice was raw, vulnerable. Not because you are Moon, not because fate threw us together, but because you are you, and I don't care if I ever found Moon or not, because my heart already belongs to you. Vine felt her eyes sting with unshed tears. Her lips trembled, her heart humming against her chest. You really mean that? Jungkook let out a small laugh, tilting his head. You think I will say something like this? If I didn't, his hand slid down to her waist, pulling her closer. I am June Jungkook. I don't say things I don't mean. Van let out a shaky breath, her own emotions overwhelming her. And then, without thinking, without hesitation, she reached up, threading her fingers into his soft hair and pulled him down. Their lips met in a soft, slow, deep kiss. His lips moved against her with a mixture of hunger and tenderness, as if sealing every word he had just said. Van melted into him, her heart flirting wildly.